Well, this morning, the title of my message is Stockpiling Treasures. And you guys are going to be able to join me on a journey that I'm going through right now with the Lord. And really what He's been ministering to me for the last week in my life on very specific things. And I won't really get into what those things are. Of course, by me talking about it, you would have understanding, you would empathize with what I'm talking about. But really, I've chosen to kind of keep it more generic so that you can fill in the blanks. Because where each of us are at in our life, in our heart, in our journey with God, while similar, is different. And there are a lot of things that we need to talk about and learn about, but it's no different than, if you go to a class on leadership, for instance. Hopefully they're going to teach you everything you need to know about being a leader. But it's not until you're actually in that moment and you have to apply leadership principles that it becomes very important, right? So, in other words, I could talk to you all day about this area that God is working in through me, but it would be like being in a class. It's not until you're actually in that moment and you are the one that's responsible for making those decisions that all of a sudden it comes to a place where, wow, this is a lot more than I thought it was. This is a lot harder than I thought it was. This is way more complex. And the good thing about God is that He is simple when it comes to what He asks from us. So, stockpiling treasures. Most Christians know that there's a concept in the Bible about storing up for ourselves treasures in heaven. And I think the life of Jesus gives us so many great examples of how He lived and how He conducted His ministry, so to speak, of what this looks like. And I'm going to get into that a little more later, but this idea of stockpiling treasures, storing up treasures in heaven, I think is a lot different than most people realize. We have certain perceptions of life, certain things we understand based on how we were brought up, the things we've been through in our life. Everybody's perception is a little bit different. So this idea of storing up treasures in heaven, I think loses a lot of its value because of our lack of understanding. So my goal this morning is to just simply, again, maybe highlight some things that you haven't thought about before, or that you haven't heard before, or maybe it's in a new way. But my goal is, again, just you're along for the journey. This is exactly, I have a very specific issue in my life right now that I am going through. And like all of you, as I journey with God, as I pursue this walk with God, He is so faithful to start shining lights on areas in my heart and in my life where maybe it's not quite where He wants it, And I do that as a way of humbling myself before you to show that, if this is the state of the pulpit, then it should be the state of the pews. I'm no different than any other person where I have things that come up in my life and maybe God gets my attention and says, hey, we need to redirect here. Or, hey, you didn't realize that this was going on in your heart, or whatever, right? So, this may or may not speak to you this morning. I hope it does, obviously, or I wouldn't be wasting my breath. But this, again, is my journey right now. This is something I'm literally walking through right now. And I was given scriptures this week for my sermon. And separately, the Lord was dealing with me in this area. And it was great when I went to bring my sermon together, how they all matched up. Like the Lord was giving me random scriptures. He said, this is for your sermon on Sunday. I said, okay, I wrote it down. And I just worked through that all week. As at the same time, He's, smacking me on the back of the head like, hey, hello. No, He doesn't do that to me. But it all lined up, and I love when God does that, because when you really pursue God, when you really listen for His voice, and you journey with Him, everything will always line up. Everything will always come together. People make it so much more complicated than it needs to be, this whole Christian thing, this walking with God, when really it's all about relationship. And the more you pursue that relationship, the more you're going to see things happen. Prayers answered. And it's the journey that God is really looking at. So, stockpiling treasures. It's different than what we think, and there's a spiritual impact on our life that is much deeper than we realize. So we don't prioritize this when we really should. And I'm going to kind of show why we should. But first we have to kind of understand what is it that we're talking about. And so to do that, I'm going to start with the testimony. And I think it's always easier to relate to a story. It's easier to relate through an experience. And as some of you know, the Lord blessed us very supernaturally with a ranch back in 2017. And it was a beautiful ranch. We were able to build a house that we did not have the money for. Like, God just made a way for everything to work out. And, I had been in a place before that for probably, 10 to 15 years where my finances were a wreck. I didn't learn growing up that you're not supposed to spend all your money on useless things. Living within your means, that was like somebody talking Chinese to you. Like, I have no idea what you're telling me. Budget? Is that a French word? I don't know what that means, right? Is it budget or is it budget, right? Is it Target or Target? Like, I don't know what budget means. And so, unfortunately, throughout my life, my late teens, all through my 20s, and really into my early 30s, I made the credit card companies a lot of money. I really did. I made banks a lot of money. And it wasn't from like investing to get a return. This concept of money has always been very difficult for me. And I say that humbly before you, like I'm just a person. I put my pants on the same way you guys do. And so we reach this moment in our lives, me and Lindsay, where I'm given this blessing of a ranch I cannot afford. A custom home being built that is way outside of my budget, or at least I thought. And everything just works out where all of a sudden I could afford it. And I was in a place financially where the banks, they were probably shocked themselves when they got to the point where they're like, hey, we can approve this guy. It wasn't a rejection letter anymore. It was an approval. And I about did backflips that I can afford a mortgage for this house that it's just crazy, right? So I'm just saying all this to say that, that time in my life was so incredible because I just saw moment after moment after moment where we had some desire for something, as part of that. Hey, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. And the Lord just came through for everything. Money was basically no object. And it wasn't like, I had money just being thrown at me. It was things just lined up and they were in place. And the next thing you know, we have the ranch and we have this beautiful house that, we're going to spend the rest of our lives in. We literally built it with the intention of making it big enough for us, our kids, whatever grandkids we might have, have plenty of space. And all the fixtures, everything that we put in it, we went a little overboard on some of the stuff, not like finishes, but in how the house was designed. Because I'm like, well, we can upgrade a lot of finishes later. Let's get the bones the way we want the house to be. And the property itself backed up to a 1,000-acre ranch, and we're on like the highest point in the area. So I mean, it's like as beautiful as it can get. Every single day, and I literally can prove this to you with my photographs. Every day, because of how elevated we were, we had the most magnificent sunset and sunrise every day. I have pictures that you would swear came from a magazine, and they're on my iPhone where I just happen to walk outside and the sky is like purple, red, orange, super bright, like wow. I've never seen sunsets like this. And I had always dreamed of being able to have a cattle ranch. Ever since I was a kid, seeing old westerns, I loved that idea of just going and getting a ranch, having cattle, working the ranch. Like, that's always been my dream, and it's still there. It's still sitting in my heart of wanting to have a cattle ranch. And at that time, we had one. Me and my dad got some cattle. Our properties were next to each other, and the Lord really used them to bless us quite a bit as part of that process. So then, fast forward 5 years, and the Lord asks us to walk away from it. He told us we're going to be moving on. We're going to have to sell the property. What? I'm going to sit on that word, Lord, because I feel like maybe I had like spicy food for dinner and I'm not hearing you clearly. And again, he said it. And again, he said it. Over and over and over for months, he said it in my heart. And what I had no idea is the same thing in a different way was happening to Lindsay. We didn't talk about it. I didn't want to bring it up. I don't want to go anywhere. I mean, it's literally, that was a place where you could describe it as like the land of milk and honey. Like it was such a beautiful property. So then things started popping up in my life. You know, like if you ignore God long enough, things will start popping up where people around you will be talking about what he told you. Random people, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, and they just start randomly talking about things like that, right? Things just start coming in your life where you can only ignore the word for so long. And I started even seeing that. So finally I brought it up to Lindsay, and I found out she felt the same way. And I really didn't have a lot of words to say. There's not a lot that really affects me. Unfortunately, I'm a little numb to certain things, especially emotions, life. It's one of the things that has helped me in a lot of areas of my life to be able to just live and not have deep wounds. I'm numb to the world kind of in a good way. You know what I mean? I don't care about what people think. I don't care about how hard a situation is in front of me. I just have something within me that overcomes so easily. But this is one of those moments where, I kind of felt like in my heart I got hit by a freight train. So long story short, we sold our land. And of course, the Lord used it for his glory, right? We were able to buy this house in cash. Like I never thought, this dope who doesn't know anything about finances would be in a place where before I'm 40, I have a paid off house. And I didn't do anything to earn or achieve that. It was all God, right? So everything lined up to put us in a place where we were blessed. We were very blessed. But yet, I had to give something up that was so dear to my heart. And it wasn't something that I was like holding before the Lord, like I'm not going to do this, like I cherish it too much. But he asked me to do something. And I remember the moment when we were kind of in the final steps. I just kind of had a moment with God where I'm like, Lord, why would you give me all that and seemingly answer that prayer of my life's heart of, having a cattle ranch, only to make me give it away and walk away from it? It makes no sense to me. Everything lined up. Everything was perfect. And we could have stayed. We could have stayed, but it was not the will of God for us. And I had to come to terms with that. And so we went through that, and we gave that blessing up. As quickly as God gave it to us, we walked away from it and we gave it back. So why would he take us down that path? Why would he ask me to walk away from something that he gave me supernaturally? Like I told you, my dad was a really big part of how the Lord blessed us. And he, I think, had intentions of, we're going to be close and we're going to do a family thing within that property and his property. And so when he found out we were selling, it caused some problems. So why would God do that? Why would God set all that up and use that as a blessing even to them to shine his love towards people that don't really follow him, to be honest? Only to put us in a path where it was going to cause strife within my family. Trust me, I've asked these questions, and the Lord has revealed a lot to me. Because we know that God's going to take us outside our comfort zone. He's going to take us right to that place that we're not comfortable with. That place that we haven't thought about. Or that place where we're like, whoa, Why would this happen in my life? I'm not ready for that. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to move forward in that. And that's exactly where he wants us. Because it's in those moments where he can become strong. When we actually follow what he's asking us to do, the path, the journey that he takes us down. And this is just one example in my life where we decided to honor God, obey his word, and plenty of people told us that we were stupid for walking away from this. I mean, I'm just going to say it for how it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Why would you do that? That's the dumbest thing in the world. You know? But now we're in a place where we're blessed, right? We're in a much better financial position. We're positioned within the city the way the Lord wants us to for the ministry. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that God is using through that moment. But it still took me and Lindsay to honor him and obey him. And that was hard. That was really, really hard because it took us outside our comfort zone. We knew the kinds of problems that it was going to create within our life, and yet we came out of it unscathed. Everything worked out for our good. Every single thing. And God takes note of that. He really notices when we obey him. When we honor him with our life and we follow him down that path that he's taking us, he really takes note of that. And I'm here to tell you this morning that it is through the obedience and the honor. When you honor God with your life, when you obey the path that he has put before you, especially the one where he only lights up your feet, you can't see anything but the path near your feet. You don't see where you're going. You don't see what the direction is. You don't see what he has for you in front of you. There's a lot of times where we got to follow God kind of blindly, like a child, just holding on and just skipping and not even paying attention to where we're going. But we're still holding on, knowing that he's going to guide us where we need to go. And it's in those moments where we obey God and we follow through on what he's asked us to do and continue to follow him, that we start to receive deposits into our heavenly account. It is through those moments where the Lord deposits treasures for us in heaven. When we obey him, when we stand in a place where he asks us to do something, and we have to honor and obey him, and we do it, we're stockpiling the treasures in heaven. You're going to feel it. If you're getting a deposit made into your account in heaven, you will feel it here on earth. And there's a lot of things that lead up to those types of things, right? God's going to get you prepared for a moment like that. You're going to have a lot of little things where he teaches you and builds you up to make the right decisions, to learn how to obey, to learn how to honor him. And all of those count, right? He takes note of all of that. And he makes those deposits. And over time, he'll get you to a place where he's going to ask you to do something. And you're going to have the choice. Are you going to stockpile in the earth? Or are you going to follow God and store up your treasures in heaven? Because let's face it, if I were to take you guys on a tour of the house and the property, it's not like the most amazing thing you've ever seen, but it's pretty nice. And I would easily be able to at least get your mind to a place where it's like, could you see where this challenge was, where I could have been like, I've loved you all my life, God, and this is a blessing from you, so I'm going to keep it. By doing that, my focus is on the earthly treasures. And it's when we make the decision to focus on God and to honor him and obey him, that we decide, I'm going to invest in heaven. I'm going to invest in the Lord and let him make the deposits of treasure in heaven for me. God is so good. He is so, so good. No matter what, if you honor and obey him, he will store up treasures for you in heaven through your actions. He's the one that makes the deposit, but it's us who show up to be qualified for it through what he's asking us to do. There's nothing we could ever do or say to earn earn anything more than what we've already been given through Jesus. So I'm not saying it's through works that you earn things, but there is this concept of honoring God and obeying Him in our daily lives that makes deposits into our heavenly account. So it makes sense to think that the more we practice this in our life, the more our account in heaven grows. Just like compounding interest in an investment. If you make a really good investment and you continue to invest, over time your money will learn to make money, right? Because that interest will compound. And what was once 100 will become 1,000. And then the interest is based on that, and then it'll become 10,000. And then the interest is, and then next thing you know, you have $1 million. And it's going to continue to grow. See, even my dog is saying amen. Amen. So, I want to get into the scriptures real quick, and I'm gonna kind of help you guys understand what I'm talking about. Because again, even though you're probably following what I'm talking about so far, there's still things that we need to identify on how we do this. It's Matthew 6. I'm going to be reading out of the Passion Translation. If you're taking notes, it's verses 19 through 21. And Jesus says, "Don't keep hoarding for yourselves earthly treasures that can be stolen by thieves. Material wealth eventually rusts, decays, and loses its value. Instead, stockpile heavenly treasures for yourselves that cannot be stolen and will never rust, decay, or lose their value. For your heart will always pursue what you esteem as your treasure." So Jesus gives us this great picture, right? This picture in our mind where we get the choice of what are we going to value? Are we going to value the material things in our life, right? The things that are valuable to us, let's be honest. There's a lot of things in our life on this earth that we very much value. We appreciate, we love, we want around us. We value these things. Not even talking about people. You know, like every single one of you are enjoying the air conditioning, heater, whatever in this house. Like, it's cold outside. We value certain things in our life. That's just a silly example, but I'm just trying to point out that there's a lot of things on earth that we value. And Jesus is saying we need to focus on our heavenly treasures. We need to value the things of heaven, not the things of this earth. And it's an obvious answer if I were to say, well, which one are you supposed to value more? Earthly treasures or heavenly treasures? Well, it's Sunday morning and you guys are at church, so you're all going to say heavenly treasures, right? Yes. It's obvious. So why does it matter that I even need to talk about it? Why does it matter that Jesus brought it up? If Jesus said it, then it's important. And we should take note of anything he says. Why is he saying it, and what do I need to learn from it? Well, the first thing we have to understand is that God is not saying that we cannot have earthly treasures. He's saying not to stockpile earthly treasures, earthly riches. Right? You can have earthly riches just like you can have money. The Bible does not speak against having money. It doesn't speak against having earthly riches. God is not calling you to a life of poverty. But what is key in this scripture as to why it is so important is because what is happening behind the scene that God sees on full display. When you are in a moment where you can either treasure your earthly riches or your heavenly riches, something is happening that only God can see the full picture of. And that thing that's happening is your heart. There is a process going on with your heart that the Lord sees on full display. So when you start to value something in the earth more than you value something in heaven, he sees what's happening to your heart. And what I need you guys to understand This whole thing I'm talking about today, don't just think about cars and houses and material things. There's so much that we encounter in our life that we can value. And as soon as it happens in our heart, where it takes the place of God, boom. That's when we start to run into things like walls. Where God's getting our attention and He's saying, hey, this thing in your life, you're putting too much value in that as your treasure. So the key is not about necessarily where your treasures lie, where they are present in your life. It is, where is your heart in relation to those treasures? I've met many people who are very wealthy, and they have many earthly riches, and it doesn't control them. They hand out money like it's candy. They're very, very giving. So it's humanly possible for us to be in a place where money and riches does not hold our heart. But like I said a minute ago, it goes beyond just money and cars and houses, these things that we think of as material things. It can be anything in your life that is of this earth that you can value above something that God values. And that's where we have to key in on it, is it's in our heart. Notice at the end of those scriptures that I read, it says, for your heart will always pursue what you esteem as your treasure. See, Jesus just gave us a glimpse into what God sees in the Spirit and why He keys in on our heart when we are not storing up treasures in heaven, when we're not stockpiling into our account. God sees what's happening. And in our heart, in the Spirit, He sees us pursuing after the wrong things. And if it's not pursuing God, it will get in our way. And that's why we have to take note of it. This concept that I'm talking about this morning, how many understand that it has nothing to do with the treasure chest? You know, just last year I read the book Treasure Island for the first time. I just always wanted to read it since I was a kid. So I read it, right? And it's all about this journey to this island to get the treasure chest. And that's our problem, is when we read the Bible, we equate to our perception. Remember I talked about that in the beginning? Our perception guides us in everything in our life. And if you miss what God is talking about here, you're going to think about that treasure chest. In other words, stockpiling treasures in heaven and not on earth. You're going to focus too much in on the obvious and not realize that there are things in your life that you can treasure from this earth that have no earthly value. But they're important to you. And you've placed them in a treasure chest, and you're pursuing it in your heart. And God sees that, and that's when He tries to get your attention. So it's not necessarily, although it can be, it's not necessarily about gold pieces and jewelry. This concept that the Lord is talking about. He really wants to get our attention and understand that it's our heart that He's really interested in. So what happens in these things? Let's say you want to get married, right? You're young, you want to get married, you've all been there, done that, right? You want to find that person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. You know, I remember that was not an easy process for me. That was quite difficult because of how off my focus was. And the Lord did not let me, thank God, get too messed up with anything. But I noticed in certain moments of that pursuit how misguided I was and how I wasn't really focusing on God, to the point where it was impacting every single part of my life. Well, what happened then? I valued that thing that I wanted, which was a partner in life, to become an idol before the God that I served. You get it? There are things that we have in our life that we pursue with our heart. And when God sees that He gets replaced by these things. He tries to get our attention because that is a form of idolatry. It doesn't mean you worship it, right? You're not building a golden calf and calling it your future spouse, and I'm going to worship that thing, right? They wouldn't appreciate that anyways. It's anything that our heart can desire, that we allow it to take root in our pursuit, right? Where we're going after something more than we're going after God. That is when you know you're investing in the earth. You're investing in your flesh. You're investing in your earthly treasures that you have built up in front of you that mean so much to you. And that is what it's about. Again, we always think material things and the golden chest of treasure, like it can have to do with that. But really, what God is talking about is our hearts. What do we value in our hearts that we put before God? We replace where He's supposed to be with this thing that we're desiring in our heart, and we pursue after that thing, and then God gets put in the back seat. Those are the ones that He wants to get our attention about. A couple verses later, Jesus said to His disciples, a couple chapters later, Jesus said to His disciples, if you truly want to follow me, you should at once completely reject and disown your own life. That's followership in the eyes of Jesus Christ. Is completely and at once reject and disown your own life. And as if that was not enough, He goes on. And He says, and you must be willing to share my cross and experience it as your own, as you continually what? Surrender to my ways. So, as if rejecting and disowning my own life completely right now was not enough. He says, not only do I need you to do that, I need you to take up that cross every day and surrender to my ways, says the Lord. So, when we stockpile treasures in heaven, it's not about choosing heavenly investments, right? In order for our heavenly account to grow, build dividends and compound interest and all that stuff, right? It's about living a life of obedience and honor towards the Lord that actually compels God because of His word, right? It will never come back void to Him. He set certain things up in a way where if you follow it, it has to happen. And that's exactly what I'm talking about today. When you live a life of obedience towards the Lord, and you obey Him, and you honor Him in all your ways, you compel God to start making deposits of treasure into your heavenly account. It's so simple. And yet, again, like I said, we kind of miss it. We kind of get this perception in our head that it's something completely different. Go back to the story that I talked about in the beginning. When I walked away from that property, when I obeyed God as much as it hurt, and literally this week, He showed me in a dream how all that happened behind the scenes with my heart. I literally built up a huge deposit in heaven. He was compelled to deposit in my heavenly account because of how I honored Him and obeyed Him. And I walked away from what is completely valuable in this life. It's what we call in this country the American dream, right? You want to be able to live a life where you can pursue happiness, have a family, own your own home. A lot of countries don't allow people to do that. That's why it's the American dream, is because you have that freedom to be able to do it. It's so valuable in our life, and I was willing to walk away from that. When you really break down the scriptures and understand what Jesus is talking about, what God is showing us, there's really nothing else we can do to create wealth in heaven other than that. Obedience and honor. That is how you create wealth in heaven. That is how you stockpile treasures in heaven, is through obedience and honor. And what's interesting to me about this whole concept is, I don't think we have any clue about how amazing these treasures in heaven really are. I mean, think about it. The Bible talks about heaven and what it looks like. It says the streets in heaven are made of pure gold. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but in earth, gold is valuable. Like, we value gold very much. It would be considered a treasure, right? If you had a chest full of gold coins, that is the quintessential treasure. And that's a building material in heaven. Do y'all go out and try to chip out pieces of asphalt out of the road so that you can take the value from that and hoard it, right? You fill up your house with old asphalt chunks. I did road construction for a little while, and yeah, you can easily break up asphalt. It's easy. You could all. Why don't you guys have that in your? Because it's worth nothing. Nobody cares about old used asphalt. I'm just using this as a picture for your brain. Gold, one of the most valuable things, which is so hard to find pure gold. That's what the streets of heaven are made of. Pure gold. So, what do you think is being deposited as a treasure in your account in heaven? You have no idea, just like I don't. But think about it in that context, in that framework, where, well, if that's what heaven looks like, if that's what and you can find so many other references of how beautiful and wonderful heaven truly is. How valuable would our investment be that God is giving us? This treasure he speaks of. For us to stockpile that treasure up in heaven. I have no idea what he's talking about. But after I think about it that way, man, that's inviting. That's something that is exciting. If I obey God in my life, and I honor him, and I do the things that he's asked me to do, I go down the paths that he takes me, even when and especially when I can't see where I'm going, and that is making deposits into my heavenly account. I'm storing up treasures in heaven. Why would I want to do anything else? That's really something, when you understand it truly for what it is, if you truly believe in it, will motivate you more than anything on this earth. Nothing on this earth could ever be as valuable as that. So let's just start there. When it comes to our building up our treasures in heaven, we don't have any earthly idea how valuable, wonderful, and beautiful that is, what it looks like. And especially because it comes from a God that we serve, who is all about love. He's all about grace and mercy. Like, this is the kind of person that I want to be around. This is the kind of person I want to follow. I want to walk with, is the God that I serve. Not because I just want to get rich, but because I understand what he's trying to teach me. Is that I cannot allow anything in my heart to take his place. I have to honor him with my life and obey him in my life. And from there, it compels him. But I'll digress against that. Stockpiling treasures in heaven is so important for us to understand. It's so important for us to really press in our lives. Solomon even gave us a great word from his wisdom to illustrate this. In Proverbs 22, verse 4, it says, "By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life." It doesn't get much more simple than that. The Passion Translation says it, "Laying your life down in tender surrender before the Lord will bring life, prosperity, and honor as your reward." That almost sounds like an infomercial, right? Like one of those 2 a.m. commercials where they're trying to sell you something and you're like, yeah, right. It's going to break within 5 minutes. Or you don't believe what they're saying, that's way out there. That's what it almost sounds like. It almost sounds too good to be true. That, wait a minute, all you're saying is that I have to lay down my life in tender surrender before God, and he's going to bring me life, prosperity, and honor? That's great. Sign me up. I'll be first in line for that. So, the practical application of how we live this out, how do we do this day in and day out, is really the process of the scripture I read at Matthew 16, right? Where we have to basically disown our life and take up our cross. We give up our life to God, and we take up our cross every day in complete surrender and obedience to Him. That's what this looks like, practically speaking. The reason why, when we walk with God, when we believe in Him, and He speaks over our life, every single one of us has a path that God is going to take you down. At some point in your life, you will reach the path in your life where He's going to take you down. And there is no earthly or humanly way for you to traverse this path. And that's where we kind of don't connect the dots. We continually walk and try to do good as Christians, and day in and day out, but there's a lot of things that we get involved with that we really shouldn't. Because it's a path that only God can take us down. And we got to be able to recognize those paths. When He's taking us to a place where He's going to elevate us, right? He's going to take us to a new level. Man, it sounds so good. Take me to a new level, God. Only He can get us there. And so, it reiterates what I'm talking about. When you get to a path where it seems like nothing you can do is affecting it, you're at that place where only God can take you there. And to be frankly honest with you, that's exactly what I'm dealing with in this issue in my life, where God is opening my eyes. He showed me all this, and He said, don't you get it? You can't go there. You will not get there on your own. I have to take you there. I have to grab your hand and take you there. So what does that require of me? To look down at my feet that are lit up and just trust in the hand that I'm holding as He takes me there. So it can be very confusing, right? Maybe you have a strong feeling in your heart or your spirit that God wants to take you to a place, or He's put a calling on your life, or He's got some blessing that He's spoken into your life that you know is coming, right? Like, think of those big things in life that God promises us specifically to our life, right? And more often than not, we don't realize it, but we get in the way. And a lot of those things, more often than not, we get in the way. Because there's certain things that He can only do through our obedience and honor to Him. There's nothing we can do to reach these places that God has maybe spoken in our lives except for honoring Him and obeying Him. And it's Him that takes us there. This issue that I'm dealing with, I have worked tirelessly to see the word of the Lord come to pass in my life. If I were to give you the amount of information and effort and all these things of really just trying to follow God, just trying to honor God and do my thing, you would be astounded, like, well, what is the problem? And that's what the Lord has been revealing to me, was that there was a place in my heart that was pursuing that and not Him. And I didn't even realize it. It had become an idol in my life, and I wasn't even aware of it. I had no idea that deep within my spirit, there was a little golden baby calf just sitting there where God was supposed to be. And He had to show it to me. And thank God He's so gracious to show us these things like, you know what? Yeah, you're right, Lord. When I really stop and if I'm honest with myself, I did put that before you. I was pursuing that. So what does that mean? Exactly, you're right. It was a treasure. I didn't realize it, but it was a treasure in my heart. Why? Because I was pursuing it instead of pursuing God and letting Him bring it forth. And it's after that that He showed me that I'll never get there without Him taking me there. It's not going to happen. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, Obedience and honor are the only things that can get me to this place because it moves me out of the way and it puts God where he can actually be the one to take me through that path. Has anyone ever tried to scale a mountain before? I've gone on some hikes. I was blessed to grow up in Northern California, and while it has its drawbacks, the landscape and geography and nature in California is incredibly beautiful. I truly believe that it is one of the most beautiful places on this planet. I have been a lot of places, and there are just certain areas along California and the mountains and stuff where it's like, man, did a little bit of heaven get sneezed out over this or something? Like, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And some of those hikes are hard, like Yosemite is one of those places where there's some hikes there that people just don't even try because it's so intimidating, it's so difficult, right? Not to mention some of the other places where, like, you could die trying to scale some mountain. That's how you have to look at these journeys that I'm talking about, where there's nothing you could do to get there. You have to have God go with you. You have to have God take you there. That's kind of what it looks like. Where we're trying to get up this mountain that literally has no path for us to be able to get up it. The only way to the top of that mountain, in order to be in the place where God has called you to be, is by him taking you there. So we have to have that intervention. We have to have that power of God that overtakes our life. So we can't focus on earthly treasures. And honestly, hopefully after everything I've been kind of laying out this morning, you guys can take an inventory of your heart. You can look at, maybe there's some things in my life that I have been pursuing in place of God. Again, they don't have to be a treasure chest. It doesn't have to be some material thing. It's anything of this earth that you pursue instead of God, or more than God, or whatever. And you can be a great, wonderful child of God, living a great, wonderful Christian life, and still encounter moments like this, where he highlights to you that, hey, this part of your life, this part of your heart is off. Sometimes we get too focused on the word that is spoken over our life, the calling that God has given us, the things that we desire to see happen in our life through God. It's very often that we get too focused on that, or the process of how we get there. And instead, what we should be focusing solely on is the one who spoke it over our life. That's what we have to focus in on. How many know that there are some things in your walk with God that require you to do nothing? You are required to do nothing in certain paths with God. Certain places he calls you to, he requires you to do nothing and to get out of the way. To simply just follow him. It can be hard when we find ourselves in the place where we're trying to move in God, right? We want to see this thing happen in God, this word come forth, this blessing, whatever it might be, when really, he might just want you to just rest in him. Stop doing anything, get out of the way, and rest in God. Under his wing. Let him fight that battle. Let him go forth. Because there's nothing you could do that would ever impact that, right? Maybe you need a word from God in your life. Maybe you need a move of God, a supernatural blessing. We all hope for certain things. There's probably something we're all longing for, hoping for, or needing God to intervene and show up for. Something that needs heaven's intervention, right? And the only way for God to truly get the glory is for us to rest in him. Through obedience and honor, you will find a place of rest. You will find a place where you just kick back and you let God be God. You do the things that He's asked you to do, but you don't try to make things happen. You don't try to make a word come to pass. You just rest in Him. And that's what brings glory to God. But it's not like He's interested in glory, right? He is glory. Glory comes from Him. But He wants to be glorified through our life. And it's through this obedience, this honor, this storing up and stockpiling treasures in heaven that He is able to be glorified in our life. Not just with the prosperity that it brings. When you walk with God, you will be given blessings in life. And I don't just mean material things. So in order to stockpile our treasures in heaven, we have to find this rest. We have to be able to be willing to obey and honor God. And honestly, to just get out of His way. Sometimes it's as simple as that. It seems counterproductive. That's why it's hard for us. It seems very counterproductive to just sit back and let God be God. Because it feels like we're losing control. We're letting go in a way where it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How's this going to end up? How am I going to know that everything's going to work out? But that's the place where you want to just sit and trust and believe in God. We all face things in our life where we're going to feel inclined to do something, to act, to speak, to do anything that we think will help the situation. And a lot of times God just wants us to be still. Wait on Him and just seek out His presence. He just wants you to chill and just be with Him. And the funny thing is right when you think that answer's coming, right when you think that blessing's coming, the moment you're like, here it is, He's going to say just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. Because He loves being with us. He loves being next to us. Where we're in a place where our hearts are truly seeking Him out. He cherishes that so much that He'd be like, wait, don't mess this up. We're having a moment. We're connecting. Our hearts are connecting. Let's just wait here a little bit longer and be able to feel the love. Don't mess it up. That thing you're thinking about, it's coming. Don't worry about it. Let's just focus on each other, right? Like, that's how God is. That's what He cherishes. He values us so much. He loves us so much that He's willing to wait for us, that He's willing to go through so much in order to connect with our hearts. All we need to do is just lean into that moment. Lean on His shoulder, right? Just press into His presence. And that's when we start stockpiling the treasures of heaven. Because we will value that more than anything this earth can give us. And that's one of the biggest things that I got to see firsthand. And I believe it's one element of why God asked us to walk away from that ranch. It's because He wanted me to be able to experience that. I stockpile treasures in heaven by obeying Him. But it was the journey that I got to take with God that I see now was the most valuable part. Nothing on this earth could be as valuable as that. And as much as I look forward to the treasures in heaven, which really He is our treasure, that's what I got to see, is that it was the journey I got to take with Him that was the most beautiful part. I'll close with the scripture. Hebrews 4, verses 8 through 10. Now, if this promise of rest was fulfilled when Joshua brought the people into the land, God wouldn't have spoken later of another rest yet to come. So we conclude that there is still a full and complete Sabbath rest waiting for believers to experience. As we enter into God's faith rest life, we cease from our own works, just as God celebrates His finished works and rests in them. The Lord is seeking for us to find that place with Him where we find that rest that comes through obedience and honor. And it is through those moments where the decisions we make, the words we speak, the direction we start going, removes that little baby calf out of the way, and it puts God at the forefront of our hearts. And then all of a sudden, we start scaling and traversing a mountain that we never thought we could. And we'll sit back in amazement at God, like, how are you doing this? How are you doing this? Because the one thing that the Lord pointed out to me in that journey of us getting that ranch is along the way to get it, that's exactly where I was. Me and Lindsay were valuing God so much in that moment. We had gone through some things right before that where, man, we really pressed into God. Not for answers, not for Him to do anything, just to press in and just seek His presence and to just obey every single thing we need to do and honor Him with every part of our life. Day in and day out, we weren't thinking about where we were going. And the next thing you know, it was like heaven opened up on earth. And we received this huge blessing that I could not afford. And yet, it was not a burden. It was a blessing. It was so amazing how I was in that place and didn't even realize it. And how everything just started working out in a way that I could have never imagined. And that's the beauty of it. That's what happens when God gets involved. I think I've said everything I need to say. Again, I hope this encourages y'all. I hope you guys can identify in your life the areas where maybe you've put them before God. Maybe it's not a thing, a material thing. Maybe it's something in your life you're pursuing in your heart. And really just set that aside. And find your rest in God. Just obey Him. Just honor Him with your life. Everything will work out. Everything's going to go the direction it needs to go. It might not happen in 5 minutes, but it will go the path and the place that it needs to go. Amen.